I think where I want us to start is really setting the stage. So, Alison, let's set the stage with the differences between the way that we think about funnel attribution and funnel metrics versus multi-touch attribution. So, from like a high level, if you got on a call with a client and they're just like, help me understand this from a high level. Where do you start? Where do you go when you're trying to explain this?
Yeah, so I mean, the way that I think about the funnel is it's really about um, measuring how, your volume, velocity, conversion rate, the three V's, understanding um, what touch points are starting your sales journey or what is your tipping point, and then based on that, like what are your conversion rates? How long is it taking those leads to get through your sales process to pipeline to convert to close one, and then really using that data to optimize each stage of that funnel. Like, where are the bottlenecks occurring? Are the bottlenecks occurring, you know, early on, you're not getting enough MQLs, or is your bottleneck happening later on? After that meeting that you had, you're not converting those to pipeline. Or is it even in the, you know, initial outreach that your sales team is doing? Are those messages not resonating and things are just falling off at that point? So really using that data to hone in on where your bottlenecks are and where things are dropping off, and then using that to optimize, and then using the data as a testing ground for once you've once you've made a change, are we seeing that in the data? So, like, if we decide, oh, we're going to change our sequences in outreach so that they resonate more, are we then seeing a better conversion rate post implementation of that optimization? And then conversely, on the multi-touch attribution side, that's really where you're looking at all of your touch points and what's working and what's not just the tipping point, and kind of measuring the effectiveness of those touch points in terms of, when we see someone engaging with this kind of content, we see a higher win rate, or when we see someone engaging with um, another type of content, are we seeing those deals close faster? And finding out what particular touch points are working and what's not, so that you can reallocate your budget or create more content that's similar, so that you see the results you want to see.
So, one of the things that I always hear from people is around the funnel on the funnel attribution side is they don't like tying everything back to a single touch point. They're like, it's too simplistic. Um, but then, some of the things that I know that we've been thinking about internally around like tracking signals, and I'm trying to understand that the tipping point is really kind of the counter argument to that. So, Chrissy, you want to kind of break down some of that and kind of talk about, in particular, the criticism of a single touch model, but then why is tying it back? And I know, Alison, you've talked a lot about like the conversion rates through the stages, but like when you tie those conversion rates back to a single touch point, what is the benefits of that? What would you say to someone who's like, I only want to do multi-touch. I only want to do multi-touch. I don't like this single touch stuff. What do you say
Yeah.
to him, Chrissy?
Um, so I think one thing is, like, if you are kind of well versed in the customer journey, like you said, there's a ton of touch points that happen along that journey, whether it's like pre-sales ready versus after that. And so I think, like we said, multi-touch attribution can lend to that, because then you're getting insight into those individual things that can like lift or do some analysis where if you take away a touch point or anything like that, like what is the propensity still that opportunity closed one. But when I think about the attribution on the funnel data, like you said, I really think about kind of measuring what signal we're sending to sales, or that becomes sales ready. And in some ways, those can also just align to your different go to market motions. So for us, when we have, say, like a more typical MQL comes in inbound, say they converted on an ad, they filled out a demo request form, we're going to tie that person back to like paid search, Google, and then the demo request. So we can give that attribution down to the offer as well as like where they came from. But that's going to become now sales ready, and the salesperson needs to follow up with them, and seeing the data of that person and even that source or offer, or even that's like more of a demand gen kind of inbound motion, being able to tie the funnel metrics down to that type of signal, and also that type of sales ready uh, uh, journey. So like that, I would even look at, okay, if we look at our hand raisers, the people that came through demo requests, what is the conversion rate compared to say outbound? It's going to be different. So being able to slice that difference. And then alternatively, like I said, there's other cases where someone can become sales ready and start a funnel. That could even be a partner sends over an opportunity. We still backdate that data. They become sales ready and then opportunity and so forth. And then also for outbound. So being able to actually measure the effectiveness of the signals you're sending to sales, or the type of even like go to market like motions in some ways, if you want to even dumb it down even more to that kind of thinking, is a great way to think about your funnel metrics. It's also a way to like draw a line in the sand, because when we think about it, like, yes, I think the confusing part is we're talking about it like a funnel, but I think it's really more about a life cycle journey, like we talked about, or a sales journey. And that usually starts at when it's sales ready. And so tying it at that kind of last thing that they did to actually make them sales ready is a great kind of one touch to measure throughout. And it's very clear and concise. There's no like, oh, this should get credit. It's like, no, the whatever the thing that made them sales ready gets the credit. There's no like argument over that. And it gives you a better sense of the data. Multi-touch attribution, in my opinion, if you're trying to get insight into what are the offers or campaigns that are um, better at like driving people through the funnel, it's very much more like art, in my opinion, especially as it's getting harder to measure. In some ways, you want to look at your campaign, like the campaigns, and tie the multi-touch attribution. Sometimes you want to also then layer on self-reported attribution to then get better details. And then in some ways, you might want to even add on like implied attribution. You did a billboard during Dreamforce, your website activity went up, your inbound conversions went up. You could maybe tie that back to your billboard during that time, and that's a way to do implied attribution. So getting insight into like what's working in general across all the touch points is much harder. It has a lot of nuance to it. You need someone who's very much embedded into like the go-to-market strategy and the marketing and the sales motions to make sense of all of that. And it's really to just improve. Like, should we do more of this? Should we actually do none of this? Because if those campaigns you're doing don't show up in the multi-touch attribution, that also means to me like don't do it. And that's a little bit easier. It's actually to make sense of it, like don't invest more in that. So to me, tracking the funnel and thinking about more of like what is the effectiveness of like what we're sending to sales as a signal is a much more telling and actionable type of data. Because also there's things you can do operationally. Okay, let's do um, let's do less outbound, or we're sending leads to sales too quickly and we should only send them once they have done like a hand raiser event. These are all some decisions you can make off of that data from your funnel metrics and funnel attribution.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things I want to call out there. The first one is around kind of this concept of the signal that you're sending to sales. I think the really important thing I want people to take away from that is like, yes, we're thinking about it as we're attributing kind of it back to that single touch point that was the reason why they were sent to sales. But the reason why that's important is because sales should be crafting the right message at the right time based on the signal. So we want to learn, okay, if I send this signal to sales and they then respond with a certain message related to that signal, what are our conversion rates through the funnel? And then I can optimize both to what Alison said, maybe the sequence in outreach or sales loft based on the signal, or we can start optimizing the signals that we're sending to sales. I think that is a really important part of this revenue generation machine that you're trying to create, to optimize based like what are we sending to sales, how are sales reacting, and then we can look at the conversion rate through the